And so is the work that you've conceived there, would it kind of exist on its own regardless of that space, or is it inspired by that space? Is it inspired by the notion of it being the business school?
I came up with 3 proposals, and there was one proposal that the dean of the College of Business Administration was the one who made the decision of what he wanted for the entrance. And one of the pieces that he really liked was a wall made of stainless steel, and then there were these coins that looked like they were stacked on top of each other. And what I wanted was the profiles to be cut all the way through that wall, and it was a freestanding wall. And so the idea was that the people who are on these coins are all historical figures. Some of them weren't. There were a couple of them that were Native Americans, and I kind of wanted that. But they were all older coins as well. And then the idea for the profiles to be cut was the idea that the people who are walking by, because the stainless steel had a reflective surface, actually a mirror finish. So it could be them in the future that would be the profile on those coins.
Got it.
So he liked that, but and then there were some questions about safety issues and about the profiles were cut all the way through, and there could be solutions to those problems. But at that point, for that particular project, the budget wouldn't have been able to sustain the solutions. It would have gone way over budget. And so I had to kind of... So in the end, it's a freestanding piece. It's... In some ways, it's in reaction to the building. The College of Business Administration. One of the first things I said to the president and the chair and John Hall is I said, the College of Business Administration looks like a prison. I mean, if you look at it, it looks like a big prison from that vantage point. And it was very tall, and the courtyard's very small. And so the project that they did select, it's this triangular piece right here. And it's going to be it's imagery that's overlapping, linear imagery that's overlapping each other. Becomes more abstracted. And that would be a mirror finish, and then there's going to be a stainless steel mesh behind it so nobody can grab onto it and climb it. And that piece is about 21 feet tall by 10 feet wide on each of the sides.
Oh, wow.
And then lit within. And a lot of...
So that's similar in a lot of ways to the piece you did in Fort
Worth.
Worth.
Yeah.
Fort Worth was cylindrical versus this has, kind of...
And then
these planes.
The difference with that is that all the images in that piece were taken from images that I photographed on South Main Street.
Oh, wow.
So I wanted it to be kind of, even though the whole column or the cone-shaped piece could be made anywhere, the imagery was site-specific for that street.
Right.
So I wanted there to be a relationship between the work and the street.
Sure.
So, and here, the imagery, for me, a lot of the imagery that I've used in some of my work that is similar to that style, I thought that, it deals with business. I mean, everything that we do deals with business.
Right.
There are a few images, not maybe a handful of images that deal with the university and its various departments as far as its teachings are concerned.
Sure.
So
if you stare long enough and try to look for shapes, you can find them.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that was interesting. I was working with the Jeff Johnson, and he's in charge of actually getting the site prepared, and he's in charge of the electrical. He's in charge of just the operations of the university.
Right.
And he had already seen the piece in Fort Worth, and he was familiar with the work, and so when he saw, he could start reading imagery. But some of the people, I think the electrician or somebody else in the crew, didn't see anything. I mean, they just saw lines and stuff. And then somebody said, well, they pointed out some of the imagery. And then that person said, well, what? So he started looking and said, oh. So, but that's part of the reason why, with that type of work that I was doing, I like, because it has an abstract quality to it. Mm-hmm. And yet, if one looks at it and keeps looking at it, they start discovering that there is imagery, and then it makes them look more. Right. And then, but with the mirror finish, I'm hoping that what they're seeing are signs. I'm right now tentatively titling it "Signs of Life." So these are signs, and yet signs of the life that everybody's involved in. Right. But then when you see the reflection of yourself on the stainless steel, then it's like you're part of that. Mm-hmm. So,
right. So, are you originally from Houston or
Corpus Christi?
Okay.
Yeah.
And so, did you grow up in an artistic home, or?
No. My father was a barber and an owner of barber shops. At some point, he ended up owning 7 barber shops by the time we left Houston. He also managed and trained boxers.
Oh, wow.
And promoted boxing matches in Corpus Christi. There was a Coliseum. It was actually a really nice, very simple building, kind of like an arc. And just from like the sidewalk to the other sidewalk, but I remember going in there many times with my father when they had boxing matches in there, and so I kind of grew up with that, and then it kind of came in, and then I realized years later that kind of organizational skill that he had was something that ended up benefiting me before I actually even got into art.
Right.
In 1972, I was booking concerts for the University of Houston. Mm-hmm. I was in their entertainment committee. And then, so I had people who were in the committee who were also fellow students, stage manager, ticket manager, press person, and so on.
Right.
And so we had this group, and I was in charge of them. And so I kind of like remembered that. And then when I got into curating exhibitions, mm-hmm. It was just the same kind
of yeah. Wow. So yeah, your dad sounds really interesting, because barbers are at the center of the community, and training box. That seems like something else where it's like almost a service to teenagers in the community. Just feel like he probably had his fingers, like I feel like everyone in the community probably knew your dad.
Yes, but there was a time in the beginning when he was starting his barbershops. At that time in Corpus, barbershops were a union, and he was non-union. And then he was also...
Sounds like dangerous work.
The dangerous work, and it became more dangerous because he was actually Mexican. He was born in Mexico. Right. And my mother was born in Tynan, right outside Corpus Christi. Mm-hmm. But there were barbers, white barbers, that told him that he could move into certain areas, which he did. Mm-hmm. And there was actually a confrontation between some of those barbers, right. And then my father and some of his barbers and some of his friends and some of the boxers.
Right.
And when the other group saw that some of those boxers were really good shape,
right?
They the whole thing diffused pretty quickly. But that was when my father started getting more involved, especially when he was promoting boxing matches, because that is an area where a lot of different kinds of people like to attend, and he got to know a lot of different kinds of people in
Sure.
Corpus.
So you went to the University of Houston.
Mm-hmm. Undergraduate.
And so while you're there, you're booking concerts in the early 70s. There's bound to have been, a big name, that would have rolled through there. That
Well,
that might be interesting, right? I mean,
well, when I one of the things I was into, I really loved music.
Right.
Even from when I was a kid in Corpus, listening to radio, listen early rock and roll, soul music, Motown. I mean, it was just great. And when we moved to Houston, I remember the summer that we moved into was '65, and that summer the Beatles were playing.
Right.
I didn't go see them, but my father, who kind of disparaged some of the Beatles, thinking they were just a fad,
right.
said, well, let's try to drive by the hotel they're staying in downtown. You couldn't get within several blocks because there's so many people. But I remember that, there was an excitement about that. And in '68, I went to my first concert, and it was a Jimi Hendrix experience with Chicago Transit Authority that became Chicago, and then another group called the Soft Machine. And then so I started going to concerts, and then I thought when I got into the University of Houston, they had an entertainment committee within the program council, and they were the ones in charge of concerts. And because they had sponsored a concert before, which I didn't attend, was Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young. And I thought, well, instead of paying money, I could just work these concerts.
Right.
And at that time, because I was working within the entertainment committee, I was working for free and so for the other 4 of the 5 years that I was there, I was actually a stagehand and worked a lot of concerts. And one of the first concerts, not the first concert, but I think it was the second concert, was James Taylor, Carole King, and Joe Mama.
Wow.
And one of the treats of that concert was they all rehearsed in the afternoon.
Right.
And we just got to sit around being paid at that time because we were working for a promoter, with a promoter, and we were getting paid some money, not a lot. But it was just great to sit and watch these groups play. And that was the beginning of several concerts that I worked on. Elvis Presley, Jefferson Airplane, Grateful Dead. Actually, I was at that time, we were co-producing a concert with another city promoter, music promoter, and it was the Grateful Dead. And initially with the Allman Brothers, and Barry Oakley from the Allman Brothers just died like 2 weeks before, so they canceled, but the Grateful Dead still played. And at that time, I was working with the promoter of Warner Brothers Records in Houston, and I contacted him, and we ended up getting some albums to help promote the concert. And then he asked me before the concert started, he said, "You want to meet Jerry Garcia?"
Wow.
I said, "Sure." And so we had about maybe 10-minute conversation before they went on, and they were all dressed in these nudies of Hollywood outfits and with skulls and skeletons and roses, and it was just great. And they played a pretty long time, as they usually do.
Right.
And then the other concerts that I booked were Randy Newman, John Prine, George Carlin was the first concert I booked, and at that time he was actually rising in popularity, and we booked him for like $1,250, and about a month later his asking fee, we had already signed a contract,
right?
But a month later was 10 times that.
Wow.
I mean, we got him, and we sold out. I mean, tickets were like for $1 for students, and it's like $3.50 for everybody else. So and sold out, and but yeah. And then during that year when I was booking concerts, I went to a national entertainment conference in Kansas City, and ran into Barry Fay of Fayline Productions out of Denver. And for somehow he knew of me, and we ended up just stepping back, sitting there some chairs, and said, I really want to work with you in bringing the Rolling Stones to Houston. And so we worked together. We didn't work, the program council didn't work with him in an official capacity, but we worked with him and facilitated concert, and had our ushers work, and they worked for free because they want to see the show.
Yeah, right.
And the majority of the stage crew was our stage crew, which was fellow students, and we were already the stage crew was already getting a reputation. I didn't work stage crew during that year.